coming up on More Than Before.
A lot of it is just getting up before everyone else, reviewing, studying on the weekend, studying at nighttime. Out-study people, outdo things, go beyond what normal people would do. And the more you do that, the greater success you'll have.
This is More Than Before with Nathan Cook.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we have a great guest. I'm really excited to have him on. He's been married for over 31 years. He has gifted the world with 3 incredible children, all doctors. He himself has spent over 38 years in the medical community, and he is a speaker. He is an author of 2 best-selling books, and I'm also excited to dive into his story today. Chip Helm, welcome to the show. How are you today, brother?
You know, Nathan, it couldn't be better. Just talking to you and being in cold weather in Milwaukee. I mean, what more do I need? But it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Yeah, well, it's so good to have you on. You know, we have a mutual friend, and I was asking her, who do you know that would be a great guest on the show? And she said, "Oh, I know exactly who should be on." So she introduced us, and I was super ecstatic to get to know a little bit about your story as we first talked. But I'm really excited to share that story with everyone else. How about giving us a little bit of context? Where are you today in terms of what you're doing in life? And then let's rewind to the past and talk about how you got to where you are today.
Well, obviously, I've been in the medical community or business for about 38 years. Never had a job in my life. I've had too much fun for 38 years, and we can talk about that, never having a job. But, it's funny, when I go back, this is not what I wanted to do. When I grew up, I wanted to be a dentist, just like my father. So I went to dental school. Found out about 3 years in that I just didn't have the small hand-eye coordination. And so it just didn't work out. And, what's funny about that, it led me to a mentor. And I believe in mentors. I mean, it's funny. I have these what's called Chippisms. And it's funny, I always say about a mentor, mentors don't find you. You find mentors. And I was lucky to have one. His name was Bill Armstrong from the IU School Foundation here in Bloomington, Indiana. And he just said, "You know what? I think you've got such good communicative skills. I believe you should get into sales." I said, "Sales? I had no idea what sales were. Christ, today, now there's sales courses and there's sales degrees. But back then, so next thing I knew it, he hooked me up with this medical company. And I've been with the same company for 38 years.
Wow.
On a personal note, I've just kind of lived a dream. I mean, about 10 years ago, I started thinking about hopefully somebody would want to listen to what I have to say. Maybe I had some words of wisdom. Maybe I have what's called those Chippisms. And whenever I say Chippisms in my books and stuff, when I speak, it's because I want to say something that I want you to remember. I want you to put it up there in your noggin. I want you to just remember this because it's really, really important. And so that's why I just started calling it Chippism when I'm speaking, and that way people would say, "Okay, wait, I better listen. So, so fast forward. So that's what's going on. I'm still enjoying what I'm doing. Otherwise, maybe I wouldn't be doing it anymore. So,
yeah, no, well, I love it. And you're actually working on another book from what I hear, correct too, right?
Yes, this one's going to be more of a business book. I fell in that thing that everybody's in sales. That's one of my Chippisms. Well, I'd go around the country and speak, and people go, "What do you mean everybody's in sales? I'm in IT. Or I'm an entrepreneur, or I'm an HR." We're all in sales. We're selling something every single day. We're either selling a widget, we're selling ourselves. This is what we're doing every single day. Heck, I've got to try to convince my wife sometimes just to convince her to do something. Well, that's sales.
Sometimes I'm trying to convince her all the time.
I know. But most people don't think they're in sales.
Yeah.
And that was the whole premise of my first 2 books was, that in all honesty, we're all in sales.
Mm. So tell me a little bit about what life was like growing up for you. So you were the youngest of 5. I mean, that's a pretty big family, but not only were you the youngest of 5, but you were also the only boy in those numbers. Tell me a little bit about childhood growing up. Because I know for me, my sisters always picked on me. I was their doll.
They picked on me a lot. I probably played with dolls. I was lucky. I got into sports. I played 3 sports growing up. My father was an orthodontist. He's deceased, and my mother is too. And so I grew up in athletics a lot. And so I went from one sport to the next, from baseball to football to basketball, whatever, for 4 years. I ended up playing football at Indiana University under a guy named Lee Corso. I don't
Mm,
know if you've heard of Lee Corso. He's
kind
still
of a
around in
small
his
name
80s
guy.
on ESPN. So yeah, I mean, having four sisters, I can tell you this, I never saw a bathroom because the bathroom was always full. And so, yeah, it was a very interesting upbringing, but fortunately, sports uh, made me sane or kept me sane.
What were some of your earlier influences in life, like that you remember that maybe had a larger impact on your development later on down the road that maybe you didn't realize until you got older?
Well, I mean, I always pride myself. Not everyone says their father is their mentor, but my dad was. I mean, he was a hard worker. He taught me that. I mean, he taught me that's a golden rule, and that hasn't changed today as it was 30 years ago or 38 years ago when I started. His hard work, he just kept the family together that way, and he never missed a practice. He
Mm.
never missed one of my games. And I think that's what I just strive to see him and why he influenced my life. I try to do the best I can, with my three children when as they grew up. But so he had a lot of influence, on me, and I really want to be just like him. It was really a sad day when I came home and brought home a little card, and I wrote in the card, and I had to tell my father I was no longer going to continue in dental school.
Mm.
And it was he opened up the card, he cried, I cried, and I don't think I'd ever seen my dad cry in my life. So that was a very impactful moment for me. So that was one, and probably the other person that really influenced a lot was this, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, this guy named Bill Armstrong. He was the head of the IU Foundation back many, many years ago. And he actually, to be honest with you, he helped me get into dental school, and he helped me get into working for this medical company for the last 38 years. He was quite a man. He taught me a lesson of how to remember people's names and stuff. So I carried a book from early on. And every time I met someone, I'd write their name down. I'd get their children's names or their wife names or girlfriends or boyfriends. And I'd keep a couple little hot things around, about who they were. And so the next time I saw that person, if I mentioned that, oh my God, they just said, oh my God, how do you remember all this? It's because I put it to memory. And I would call him sometimes, and it would be 6 months, and he didn't even know my voice.
Mm.
So he was unbelievable, had a gift of networking and remember people's names. And that's really key in anything you do in your life is how good are you as far as networking and remembering people and what they do.
I think what you said there is so powerful because today, because we have technology, we use technology more as a crutch than an actual benefit in much of our lives. Like what you were just talking about, names. It's so easy for us that someone introduces themselves and then 5 seconds later we forget their name. Oh, I'm sorry. What was your name? In fact, we don't even say I forgot your name. We just keep going on in the conversation and never ask it again. And I'm guilty of this too. I've been to a couple places where I've known and introduced myself to people, and I've been around them for years. And I look at them to this day, and I'm still like, I still don't remember your name for some reason. And I'm so embarrassed to ask their name, right? Because you want to know someone by their name. I'm curious from your perspective in networking because you have been around a lot of people. I love this idea of how to remember names, of having your little book to write names down. How powerful is it to know someone by name? What's the power in a name?
It's unbelievable powerful. So let me step back a second. If I walked into a bar and I introduced to someone, I wouldn't remember them at all. But when it concerns business, I never forgot a physician's name or
Mm.
someone at the hospital or something like that. It's funny, but remember something. Here's a Chippism. You only remember what you want to remember. You're going to remember it if that means something to you. That's why a lot of people don't remember things. So that's one thing. But the
Mm.
power of knowing someone goes like this. If you can ever get someone to start talking about themselves, if they want to tell you their story, or if they want to tell you about them because you remembered and they want to expand on those stories, you've got them exactly where you want them. You got them what I call another chipism in your pocket. unless you got holy genes, they're not going to fall out of your pocket. You got them for life. They will always be indebted to you if you remember who they are and you know a little bit about them and you care about them. So it's the most powerful thing that you can do. Now, like I said, I'm really good when it concerns business contacts. I'll remember physicians from 10 years ago in conversations. But if it's personal stuff, I really don't remember a lot. Well, why is that? Because again, you only remember what you want to remember if it means something to you. That's why people is funny about who they remember and who they don't.
So I'm curious, I don't ask this question very often, but I'm curious, what were some of those early on jobs that you had growing up that kind of you cut your teeth on that gave you some gumption and maybe learned some lessons from?
Well, you have to understand something. I was in sports. So that's one of the greatest lessons you can learn. You learn how to lose. You learn when things go bad. You learn that when things, you learn teamwork. You learn to care about your other people besides yourself. That's why I've always spoke a lot on humility and being humble. So I would say that probably sports, because I played 3 sports for so long, and then I played some in college. That probably was my greatest, where I learned all the lessons, that I've learned. And also I forget about this. I mean, you go after things. You're a hard worker. You get up early. You're the first there. It's funny, when I called a meeting when I was director of sales, and I called a meeting, I'd say it's 8:00. If you didn't show up at 7:30, 7:45, as far as I'm concerned, you're probably not going to get promoted. So my point, because to be on time is to be early. That's another, to be on time is to be early, and people just don't understand that. So those are the lessons I learned, early on in my childhood. I didn't do your normal things. To this day, my wife is so frustrated with me because I don't cut the yard, or I don't use a hammer or use a screwdriver around the house, because I didn't grow up doing that. I was always practicing or preparing or trying to get better, as an athlete. So I didn't do some of the basic stuff. And so I'm still hearing it from my wife 31 years later.
How important is the preparation of things? Because being in sports gives you a little bit of an edge of this, because you have to prepare day in, day out. There isn't really a cheat day. I mean, there are people that have cheat days in sports, but at the highest level, at the highest caliber, they're not having a ton of cheat days. And I always remember that I saw this video of the Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and I think he had like some huge stack of pancakes, and
Right.
he put peanut butter on it and like syrup, and he's like, everyone needs a cheat day. And then someone called him out because he had like no sugar syrup, and pancakes were protein pancakes, so it wasn't really a cheat meal. But how important is the preparation for anything in life? Because I know that sales has been a huge piece in your life, but what about on the day-to-day? Like, what's the preparation, or what is important about preparation in life to be moving towards something?
Well, let's put that as as we compare it to sales, or compare it to what you do every day, or I don't care what job you do. It's all about repetition, and it's all about preparation. And I mean, when I say repetition, whatever you do, you got to become so good at it that you could do it in your sleep. So that's what I mean by the repetition. Is it your spiel because you're a sales rep? Is it understanding numbers because you're an accountant? Is it understanding people? But you've got to repeat it over and over and over again. I used to stand up in front of a mirror, and I would go through my stuff right in front of a mirror. Or I would be in a car by myself, and I would talk to myself, and I would line up exactly what I'm going to do that day, or what objectives and what goals and stuff. So you have to become so good at what you do. It's all about repetition. And the other thing, it's about preparation, because if you're not prepared, no matter what you do, it's the little things that are important. It's the little things that you got to do every step of the way to prepare yourself. I mean, I never went into a meeting that I wasn't prepared. I understood the 3 things I wanted to do, or the 3 goals, but it's all about that preparation. And that's what you do learn a lot from sports, because if you don't prepare and you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, and you don't read up on it, and you don't go over it, and you just think you can just go do it without any kind of thoughts, you're probably going to end up getting yourself in trouble. I mean, some of the best athletes today, Tom Brady's of the world, all these people, they prepare so much that when they get into a game situation, well, when I get into a meeting situation, or I get into a customer conversation situation. So remember, everything I'm talking about it doesn't matter what you were doing. I don't care if you're in marketing over there, or I don't care what you're doing in your life or what position you have. It's still the same steps, and the process of preparing for your opportunity or for your job is going to make you better. So I mean, there are steps, and a lot of it is just getting up before everyone else. A lot of it is making sure you're prepared the night before the meeting. A lot of it is reviewing. A lot of it is studying on the weekend, studying at nighttime. Out study people, outdo things, go beyond what normal people would do. And the more you do that, the greater success you'll have.
I've heard you talk a lot about showing up and being yourself, because we all like we look at the other people that are around us, people that are successful, maybe in the same field that we're in, and we think, oh, I want to be like this person. I want to be like him. I want to be like her. And we start to emulate characteristics and pieces about those people. And it just doesn't come off right. Something just seems off in the conversation. And you talk a lot about this, of needing to show up as who you are versus trying to be someone else. Why is that important, to show up as who you were created to be versus, the person next to you?
When you show up and you care about what you're doing, people see it in your face. They see it in your eyes. They see it in the way you do, present things. They see the way that you talk to them. It's funny. I've never had a presentation in 38 years. I've had a conversation with a person. I almost treat it like they're across the table from me and we're having a cup of coffee. And they're just a friend. We're just having a conversation about life or about something maybe I was trying to convince them on. Maybe I was trying to sell them on. Maybe I was trying to work with them on something. It doesn't matter. I was always having a conversation, and they knew that I cared. And they knew that I walked in all the time. Smiling is one of the best things you can do. And whatever you do, of course, Nathan smiles right now. But it's the best thing that you can do is smile. You can't smile enough. I tell people, a smile makes up not a lot of your face. When you walk in, everyone sees that attitude. And the other biggest thing is I always cared about the customer. As far as I'm concerned, the customer can do no wrong. And I never closed the door on that customer. So they knew I cared, and I came back, and I was Johnny on the spot. If they asked me that they need something at 9 o'clock the next morning, I was there at 8:50, 8:45, waiting to give them exactly what they needed. People got to continue to learn that that's one of the most important skill sets. And that's how you take care of people. But it goes down to that. If you don't care about them and you really care about what you're trying to talk to them about, they can see it all over your face. And then it's fakey. It becomes fakey, and you just become, 90% of people just want to, let's just say, just want to sell something and move on. I never just sold something. They became my friends. They became long life friends and people I respected, and they respected me. So, and regardless if I had something that they needed or not, and that's what's really key.
Well, I love that idea about relationships, because relationships truly are important. And I don't think we put enough effort into relationships. I think there's a really big difference between relationships that we see nowadays versus relationships that we even saw 20 years ago. Because relationships 20 years ago, at least from my recollection, it was about getting to know the person. It was living with that person, like in community with them. And like it was a networking opportunity too. If there was something that you could give to someone, or that you had a product that you could sell to someone to benefit them, that was a great thing. But we're living in a world now where I feel like we're so disconnected that everyone is looking around instead of actually looking for the relationship. They're looking for the next person to sell to. And it's funny, because from my perspective, and I was just saying this not too long ago, that when I'm talking with someone, when I am adding value to someone, the majority of people that I'm adding value to, I'm not getting any kind of return on. I'm getting a return by just investing in them because I like them, because I want them to succeed. How important has that concept been in life to not necessarily put yourself behind, but to put other people in front to lift other people up, because you've had some opportunities in your life. Let's just say a lot of people we hear nowadays say, well, if you're going to get ahead, you got to step on someone else. You got to cut someone else out. You got to do something to someone else in order to get ahead. And you've had some of those opportunities in your life, and you're probably one of the rare people that have actually said, no, I'm not going to do that. Tell us a little bit about that concept of being bigger on the inside than the outside.
I never treated any customer differently. So regardless if they were a dollar customer, $1,000, $10,000, $1 million, I never treated that person any differently. So it didn't matter. That's the key to this whole thing, is I never treated anyone any differently. Yeah, I've had some tough times, and but you know what? You don't have to get ahead by screwing people over. And I've learned that, in life, in the real world, perception is reality. And people go, oh, you're crazy. No. I'm just telling you. It's like I told my son when he was being recruited for linebacker. And I said, okay, here, I'll give you an example. If you're at a party and someone across the way is doing something they shouldn't be doing, whether or not it's drinking or doing other things that are going on, you are guilty. He goes, what do you mean, Dad? I didn't do anything. I'm not doing it. It doesn't matter. You're guilty by association because you're there. I said, that's the problem. If someone thinks you did it, you did it. So in the real world, if you have a boss that says this or this, you did it, you might as well say, well, even though you didn't do it or you don't think you did it, because in their eyes you did. So now what are you going to do? You got to get up off your, behind, and you got to figure out how to go to this person and say, okay, this is whatever you perceive is fine. Now, how do we change that? How do I get better? What do you need from me? How can we communicate better? So I think that has a lot to do with it, is being able to understand that you can be humble and you can, be kind. As I always say, it's not what you say to people. It's not what you say to someone. It's how you say it to that person. And I always say that, there's a golden rule, treat people like you want to be treated. Or that golden rule, what Chip's golden rule is? Treat people like they want to be treated. And if you do that, heck, we have a guy here in Bloomington, Indiana, who owns a huge car dealership. And here's what he always said: I treat my employees like I want my employees to treat our customers. And that right there, that says it all. So I've always been that way. I've never done that. And also, a lot of leaders don't want you to get from A to Z. A great leader is more apt to, I always wanted my regional managers or my district sales managers or my clinical specialists, I don't care what it is, I always wanted them to end up getting wherever they wanted to go. And whatever I could do to get them there, that's what I was going to do. I didn't care about me. Because it was more, it means more to me to have that kind of a legacy. How did I help you get to where you're going? And I've learned that, use your eyes more, use your ears more. That's why you got two of them, and probably speak less. And, sometimes over my 38 years, my passion got the best of me, because you got to understand your surroundings. It's very understanding. You could be at a bar somewhere. You got to understand who's down there sitting at that bar seat. Could that person hurt you? You got to be careful. You got to be aware, have that more of awareness. When I was growing up in the industry, I probably wasn't as aware as I should. So I mentor a lot of young, people that, be careful, and watch what's around you. When you walk into a room, or you're in your sales meetings, and you're in business, look for everything around you and listen.
Well, environment is so important. I think we discount that a lot, because we show up at different events, we show up at different functions, and I think a lot of us don't actually walk in the room getting a gauge of who's in the room, but also what the room is about. And an environment plays a huge piece on how we show up, right? Because the environment will challenge us deep down inside and will say, okay, you say that this is who you want to be, but let's put that to the test. Let's challenge that. And you'll get in a situation in an environment, and you have the choice of whether you're going to stay in that environment or whether you're going to leave that environment and find something that's actually conducive to your growth, conducive to who you are as a person.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that necessarily you run every single time that you're in an environment that maybe isn't comfortable to you. But there is something to be said about being aware of this idea of what you're talking about, Chip, of being aware of your environment, of your surroundings, because even being in a room with other people doing things, you are guilty in some way of association because you're there. You probably didn't say anything. You just thought, well, I'll leave and that'll be nothing. And then your wife's friend was there and they called your wife and said, hey, did you know Chip was over here? And what? No. Right. And so there is something to be said about this, of being aware of your surroundings, being aware of the type of environments that you put yourself in. When it comes to growing yourself in a good environment, Chip, what are environmental characteristics that you look for to challenge you to grow today?
Well, it's funny, even 38 years later, we know our strengths and we know our weaknesses. Okay. And I'm a proponent more now of really relying on how to get better with my strengths than I am all the time worrying about someone's weakness. It's funny, you have 100% of a pie, and 95% of the people in this country are good people. Maybe 5% of who they are, they got some issues. I understand that you have to acknowledge, your weaknesses or things that you don't do well. But we as a country, or we as leaders, and we as people need to go back and think about all the good things they do, that 95%, and hone in on their strengths. So I try to do more of that. And, for myself personally, I'm always growing, trying to grow about the fact of understanding my surroundings, because I'm a talkative person. I am very passionate about things. When I start going on things, I'm very passionate. And so I just learn how to understand the environment around me and make sure, as you just said, who's in the room now? Do I do that better? Yes. Do I understand what's going on? That's what I always will constantly work on. But I actually try to work on my strengths. Even though I believe I'm a good networker, I'm working on networking every day. I network every single day. I help my children get into professional schools because of the people I know. I'm sorry to say this, but a lot of times today in this world, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Mm.
And people don't understand about networking. I used to go to shows and I have techniques of how to network and how to get to people, and the importance of people. In my book, as you say, my little $1 million book over here, because I don't, believe me, I think I have a hell of a network, but I'm not sure that if I gave that book to you, Nathan, that they would answer the phone. Okay. But I know that what I have is very, very valuable. So I guess to go back full circle around, I tend to go more so on my strengths, and I'm working on becoming better at my relationship building and better at networking, and fine tuning those skills versus trying to worry about, okay, what have I not done well, at this time. I acknowledge it and understand it, and I'm better at some of those things, but that's not what I hang my hat on.
I love that you talked and brought back your book of, if I were to give you my book of contacts, I don't think it would serve you as well as it would serve me. And I think a lot of the reason for that is the relationship that you've developed with those people. And I think a lot of people, when they look at their phone book, when they, their phone book is their phone nowadays, but when they look at their phone book, I don't think a lot of people have the depth of contacts, of connections that they need. I think that we need to develop those contacts and those relationships more. What has been one of the most important things for you in developing relationships with other people?
That's $1 million question. I would say that I go back to, when I was in the mix of everything. Right now, I'm still doing things every single day. I guess it's more of the following up with people. There was a study done. Only 25% of all people across all industries get back to people. And you know what? People just want to be acknowledged. This stuff I hear about, well, I'll get back to you in 24 hours, or give me a couple of days, I'm busy. People don't get back to me by phone, by text, by email. I learned to do this in my personal life as well as professional life, that I get back immediately. I mean, In my 38 years, I've never had that critical of a meeting that I can't get back to someone in a reasonable amount of time. But most people don't do that. And that probably is the number one thing that you can do to build those relationships and to grow your network of contacts and people to trust you and to understand you. All people want is to be acknowledged. As I was in a conversation the other night with somebody, I know you're busy, but just text back and say, hey, I'm busy for 2 weeks. Can I follow up with you in 2 weeks? Great. Or, hey, and what happens in these companies, it happens at the top down, that people don't get back to people. And so I think that's a crux of that's how you become successful, and that's how you become not successful. As I say, you want to make a lot of money growing up? Yeah, well, then listen to me, because if you get back to people, you'll be counting your money in the Bahamas, because people that's what my expression, Johnny on the spot. That was what I was known for. I'd get back to people in 30 seconds, in a minute, but you have to understand something. I do it on my personal side of my life as well as professional. It's not something you can just turn on and turn off. So it has to become part of your DNA of who you are. And you'd be amazed from how few people actually honestly reply in a pretty quick way. Okay, so maybe it's an hour later, maybe it's 3 hours later. That's okay. Maybe it is 24 hours, but I've never waited ever in my 38 years. I've never waited that long to get back to someone by phone, and you'd be amazed what that does for your relationships, your networking, who they trust. Once you get them in your pocket, you'll always have them for life. And I always say, it doesn't matter if you don't have something for them now, it's okay. It could be 5 years from now, you've got something that they need, or let's say you're doing something, they're going to remember you because they'll remember what you did for them and how you did it. And again, it goes back to, I treat everyone equally. It doesn't matter how important you are, how little you are, how much you know. It doesn't matter. Every single person, I went the complete 100% after, 150%, and I wanted to make sure you were taken care of.
It's interesting because when building our networks, I think a lot of people think, well, I'm really busy and I can't just get back to people. And I love you bring this up, because I think there are two types of people in this. There are those that are on the extreme side of things. There are people that have celebrity status, I think, and
I don't have celebrity status though yet.
But like, there are people who have celebrity status. They're constantly being reached out to. They have a very, very large following and influence that, maybe they're not going to get back to you within a month or a couple, who knows how long. The majority of us are not in that. Like, let's just be honest. You and I were not in that. And so if we're not in that category, then we should be able to find time for something. Because what I find interesting is there are people that I know in my life that if I reach out to them, I know that it will be a good week before they even respond to my text message. And it drives me crazy sometimes.
Don't get me going.
But the person that I can text, or I give them a call and they'll call me back within 12 hours, or even if they say, really busy, I love you, I got your message. Even that communicates to me that they had 30 seconds that they looked at their phone, and I know that they're extremely busy, and they looked at their phone and they said, you know what? He's important enough to respond. And how different would our relationships be if we gave people our attention, even if it's just a small, minute amount of attention? It kind of reminds me of what you were saying earlier. God gave us 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use them proportionately. And the majority of us, I don't think we even use our ears. We might use our eyes to look around for what we want, and we might hear for what we want, but we're not actually speaking life into other people. Who have been some of I know that you were talking about, Bill Armstrong being one of those huge mentors in your life. In fact, I would almost say that he saw something in you and spoke something in you that continue to grow over time with your communication. What are some of those major lessons that were kind of installed in you that you look at today and you go, man, if this lesson wasn't there, like humility, I think is a big one for you. I've heard you talk about humility a lot. Like where did humility come from? Like where did you learn that? And how has that shown up throughout your career?
Let me go back one thing and just make one comment about what you just said about taking a little bit of time to get back to someone, because as it's on my brain, remember this: there's no excuse not to get back. Number one, okay, in my mind, there's no excuse. Number two is everyone has a choice, so they just choose not to get back. So I just want to put that to bed. Everyone has a choice. They just choose not to get back to you or get back to whomever. That's their choice. But I think that's inexcusable as far as that's concerned. Um, Lessons about humility and how it's interesting you say that. I think it's part of who I am, my DNA. I grew up in a family of five, and to be honest with you, I saw selfishness in my family. I was always that type of I'll be honest with you, I'm a pleaser, just who I am. I cared more about you and having a good time. And let's say that you came to my party, Nathan, and I would worry about if you had a great time, I had a good time. That's just how I always was. I cared more about what someone else thought than maybe I should. And that's one thing I've learned. As you say, what do you do? Is that I'm trying to not worry about what other people think. As long as I'm like myself and I know who I am and what I'm doing, it really doesn't matter about the naysayers, because there's so few of those people. But yes, to go back, I've always been a pleaser. I always cared more about what you thought and what you did and what you need than my own. That's number one. It was just lessons that were part of who I was. And then I watched it as I was in leadership for 17, 18 years. And I always believed you can do things in kindness. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. If you care, sometimes I had to have the hardest discussions, but you can still do it in a kind way. And we don't have enough of that in this country and our leadership of, just being humble. And I don't know if I don't know if you're a Tim McGraw fan. He has that song called Humble and Kind. And I actually referenced it in one of my books. And that's how it is. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can still bring out that empathy. You can still be sympathetic and empathetic, but yet you can be tough. I think that's part of who I am. It's part of my personality. And I've learned that it's more and more and more important as I've been in leadership roles. It's how you treat people. And you get a lot more when you treat people with kindness than you do when you, yell at them or, pull them into a room and really just badger them or whatever. That you'd be amazed how many people lead like that. Or extension of that is micromanaging versus, get out of their way. I always led by, I'm trying to find the ways to get out of your way and let you do what you need to do instead of being micromanaged, which is a big term. And a lot of people micromanage, but I want to stay out of your way. Now, if something was going on and you weren't performing, I was going to get in your business. But otherwise, I doubt, you need to do what you need to do. Let me know how I can help you. But a lot of people, they micro, manage people. And that goes back to, that's not humbleness. That's not humility, that micro manage people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in the micromanaging, you're not lifting someone. You're essentially looking at them and saying there's something inside of them that is not good enough. And instead of developing them, improving them, encouraging them to maybe even perform better, most people take a step back and they go, well, you're not worth my time. So I'm just going to do it myself because I can do it better. And that's kind of where that micromanagement piece really does come in. One of the things I think that's really interesting about you also is you have a huge fascination for show dogs.
I raised Great Danes, and so our current Great Dane was a show dog. It was one of the best in the country. Just happily fell into it. I didn't purchase a Great Dane to show, but I've been to a few of those shows. But I guess I've learned a lot, from a dog. You're going, well, what the heck did you learn from a dog? Well, because they have unconditional love. I was told one time they're the closest thing to heaven. I said, what do you mean they're the closest thing to heaven? Well, unconditional love, and I never thought there's no other animal on the earth has this unconditional, um, love. And if you think about it, dog spelled backwards is God.
Hmm. You're
And
making me lose
that,
all my cat people on the show.
you know, I'm not saying I don't like cats or anything like that. It's nothing. We're talking about dogs, but they say that dog is the only animal, if you think about it, because you can put, the story goes, you can put my wife and the dog in the back of and in the trunk of my car, and you can leave them in the trunk of my car for an hour, and you come back and you open up the trunk. What's the dog doing? Wagging his tail or her tail and wants to please you. Now, my wife, she's not going to be pleased. She's going to probably yell at me a lot and say,
Probably
"What
gonna
the
put
heck
you
are
in the
you
trunk
doing?"
next
That's
with the
exactly
dog.
right. So, from that standpoint, no, but if you think about it, lots of cat people and cat lovers or any animal lover. But if you think about it, as far as on this earth, they say, and it's not just me. I'm not giving you a personal, but and I didn't realize until someone brought it up to me that I go, damn, I didn't realize that dog spelled backwards is God. I go, wonder how that occurred.
Right.
So I do have a love, but it's funny. My son had issues growing up when he was younger, and I believe that my Dane at that time he needed someone like that, and the kind of love that this animal showed for my son, it changed him. It absolutely changed him. So I believe in that too. That animals, I don't care what pets you have, they could really impact your life. And I'll be honest with you, my wife will say this sometimes. Maybe I love Mac more than I love her sometimes. Maybe I do. No, just kidding. But it does make a difference in your life. So I think animals in my life have impacted me. Yes, and yes, we have shown dogs, and I've been to a few of those shows, and I'm just glad he's retired now.
One of I love this idea of belief, that we can believe in other people more than they believe in themselves, and they can take that belief and they can run with that until they get their own amount of that belief that they feel confident enough in who they've been created to be. I think your father, and you've talked about him often on today's show. I think your father was definitely one of those people who instilled something deep down inside of you with confidence in who you were showing up as. I'm curious, how has that same concept shown itself with you and your children, of instilling a belief in them that they were created to be something great? Because I know that they have all moved on in life to, become something great, all being doctors. What is it about that belief in them, do you think, that has helped carry them forward towards their dreams and their goals?
Well, it's funny you say that. Obviously, I give all the credit to my wife because she stayed home with my children, not because she had to; she wanted to. At a certain time after our third child was born, Sam, and we've done some things as we were growing up with them, and how we instilled in them. I mean, there's some things right now that I talk about in my last book, which is to be more of a business book. But people ask me this all the time about the kids. I mean, you can be lucky with one, you can be lucky with two, and how in the heck did you get three? To move that. Well, obviously, they're all three type A's. I don't believe there's a type B or type C person. I believe that their A's are just, what A are you? Are you A minus or A plus or different kind? They're all type A's, but they're just different. But it's funny. We had dinner together all the time. We had breakfast together all the time. We spent a lot of time with each other. We also played a lot of games that are intuitive games that had to make you think. Chess was one of them. I taught my kids how to play chess, and different things that, so we got into that kind of thing where it made you think kind of games. And I always said one thing, it's a means to an end. That was the biggest thing I said to them their whole growing up. We didn't tell them to become an orthopedic surgeon or a veterinarian or a soon to be dentist. We didn't tell them this is your path. They decide their path. But what I explained to them and understood and they got it was if you want to get over there, to this area way over there, if you want to reach that, if you want to get that goal, well, then sometimes you just have to do what it takes, meaning that you're not going to like 90% of the classes in life that you take, from grade school to high school to college. You're not going to like most of them. I didn't like most of them when I applied to dental school. But what you got to do, though, is the way this world works is that you have to get that grade, that A, whatever you need that to get you along the way. So that's why I said it's a means to an end. It's not that you're going to like anything right here, but do you want to get there? And so they learned that it was just a means to an end, that if they would just take those steps and they would take the classes that they hated, or I had no interest, I really don't want to study, Dad, but I want to get there. I want to get that final piece. I want to become an orthopedic surgeon. I know what I need to do. So they lived it. I think my older son graduated with 3.94 out of 4. My daughter graduated 3.93 at Purdue as a veterinarian. My last one graduated 3.96. I think he beat the other two. Very rarely do they have. And the last thing we did, and it's kind of funny, it just depends on what you believe in. I paid them. So I always believed that there was an incentive growing up with my kids' generation that money meant a lot to them. So I never paid for B's or B pluses. I only paid for A's, and only in the core classes. So I must have one time had to pay for seven scorecards or 7. They brought home. My God, every time I turn around when you're about 5th grade, and you start getting A, B's, and C's, you got report cards. Brought home like 7 report cards in 1 year. You know what I'm saying? Like, what the heck?
A's pay.
So I paid all the way from the time that they started A's and B's and whatever in grade school, all the way up through high school. So, and they had such incentive. And then the third one, well, heck, the first 2, heck, I got to join that. And they made quite a lot of money. But it was worth every cent because I knew what drove them also, that kind of. But you know what means more than anything, Nathan, of this whole conversation we're having, is that they're actually better people than they are their profession. I'll be honest with you. My son said one time to me a while back, Dad, would you still love me as much if I wasn't an orthopedic surgeon? Or Dad, if I wasn't a vet? And I said, you have to understand something about your father. Your father is so passionate and so happy and so proud. This is what you're doing. But I really don't care if you want to sing on New York City and play the banjo. I don't care what you do in life. But all I care about is that you seem to be happy, and I'm just really, really proud of you. And so don't take it that it's, I'd be less proud of you if you weren't this or you weren't that. So we've had discussions like that too, to make them understand that, hey, yes, I'm just so darn proud, and I want to tell the world. And sometimes they get, well, Dad, you don't need to tell someone. I get it, but it's more about that, and that's my legacy, Nathan. It doesn't matter what company I work for, what I did in my career, as long as I'm a good husband, a good father, and I take care of my friends. And what you see is what you get. That's how I measure performance.
It really is the ultimate thing that we don't realize how much we love it, we desire it until we're older. And that's this idea that our parents are proud of us. That no matter what we did.
That's a great statement.
Like like your kids right now, even though you say like, oh yeah, I'm super proud of you. Like you couldn't have done anything else to earn more love. Like I am so proud of you. Like, although they might say, yeah, Dad, you don't need to keep shouting it from the world. You don't need to keep telling people. I'll tell you this. It is one of the greatest things to hear your father or your mother say, I am proud of you. And to hear someone else that's not related to you that says, hey, I was talking to your dad the other day, and man, he just could not stop talking about you. Like to the point that it was almost embarrassing. Like,
well, that's what it is. It's a combination of my daughter who wants to be in the background. It's probably embarrassing. And then it came up one time, hey, would you love me if I wasn't, an orthopedic surgeon? And, and yeah, I'd love you to say, as long as you're a good person, as long as you treat people with respect. It's like I told my orthopedic surgeon son, Matthew, I said, Matthew, if I ever walk into your office and you're treating your nurses, or your secretary, or your ancillary folks like crap, or your whatever. I'm gonna blow you out of this door because you don't treat people that way. You treat people with respect because what they do is just as important as what you do. And that's what I've taught my kids all. It doesn't matter what the heck you do in life, but whatever you do, it's just as important as what Johnny does down the street. I don't care. I deal with surgeons all my life, all 38 years, physicians. And what they do is important. But what I do is just as important as what they do. And that's what makes the world go round.
So I want to go full circle. You were talking earlier about Chippisms, and I love this. Why is it important for someone to develop their own Chippism? Maybe they'll call it something else, but why should someone develop their own Chippism that they live by in their life? And what is the ultimate Chippism that if someone were listening to this and there was one statement that you wanted them to take away, the ultimate Chippism, what would that be?
First of all, I wish everybody would develop their own or I don't know if it's so much you develop your own Chippism. You just decide what Chippism you've heard over the last 20 years or 30 years or whatever, somewhere that someone said, and you adhere to it. You think it's important. I'm not sure there's anything new that what I say today was there 30 years ago, and it will be there 30 years from now. So I'm not sure it's so much finding your own Chippism. It's just figuring out if that Chippism that you heard, you want to develop it more, or you adhere to it, or you just go, yes, that's me. That's one thing. So I think it doesn't matter if you run across of it reading books, if you're a big reader and you run across something that someone said. But I'd say there's two things that I would say that are key, that if I had to pick two Chippisms that mean more than anything to me than anything would be the following. The glass is half full, not empty. That means is look at things in an optimistic way. And look at that glass that you see that you think is, half empty or half full. If it's half empty, you're a negative person. If it's half full, you're a very positive, optimistic person. And I think that's extremely critical, is to continue to be positive. The other thing is treat people like they want to be treated. The golden rule says treat people like they want to, like you want to be treated. No, treat people like they want to be treated. And I think if you hold to that, I think so. So those are the couple things that I come to my mind as far as Chippisms. But I think you don't want to hang around people that are negative, that take you down. Again, I think you have a choice, who you want to hang out with. And the more people that are positive and you say, provide encouragement and confidence. Go back to one thing. I said life, I don't care. Use the word sales. Sales is all about repetition and preparation. Okay. But if you do what I just said and you work on that repetition and you work on that preparation, what's that equal? Confidence. And when you have confidence, you can walk into any situation. And if you're confident, you'll pull it off. You know what? And what's the worst thing can happen? There's no worst thing. You're okay. You're okay. It's like these podcasts. It's like talking to you today. I'm sure I made plenty of mistakes, but it's okay. Because if you do it with the right, if you do something with the right heart and the right intent, it's all good. You may not become CEO of a company. You may not become vice president of a company. You may not get to where you want to really go, but the good Lord knows. But if you do things with the right intent and the right heart, you'll always win in the long term. And plus, you can also look at yourself and say, you know what? You go to bed at nighttime. I said two things at night when I went to bed. Did I not screw over somebody today? And did I give everything I could today for whatever, company or whatever business or whatever I do, for a living, to put food on the table? Did I do it to my best of my ability before I laid my head down on my pillow before I went to sleep? But the biggest thing was that I didn't screw anyone over today, and I gave it my all today. I may not have had a great day, in some people's minds, but I gave it everything I could. And that's all you can do is get up, get on your pants and your shirt, get dressed, get out the door. And what do I say, Nathan? Just show up.
Chip, thank you so much for coming on the show. It truly has been a pleasure to connect with you, to learn more about your journey. All of your Chippisms have been absolutely phenomenal on the show. For all of you listening, I encourage you to follow Chip Helms. Grab a copy of one of his books. He truly is a wealth of knowledge. You'll hear a lot of his Chippisms in his book. Absolutely phenomenal. You can find him on a number of the social media links that are in the show notes. If you have a moment right now, please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. And drop me a note. Let me know what you think about this episode. I always love hearing from you guys. And until next time, remember to be more, see more, and experience more than before.